We're to call this 6:30 meeting of the Finance Committee to order at 6:31. My name is Joe McGiverin. I'm the chair of the Finance Subcommittee of the Holyoke City Council. To my far right is our member and president, Todd McGee, Ward 7. To my next right is at-large Councilor Sullivan. To my left is at-large Councilor Tallman. Joining us in the audience for city councilors is Terry Murphy, Ward 2, and we have a number of invited guests and public within the audience. We have a fairly good agenda here this evening, so I'd like to get it started with item number 1. Motion to take off the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Maria, you want to join us? You're first. I told you, next time you're going to be first. This is a request of a transfer. The request comes through the library. The amount is a total of $24,362.77. Coming from Children's Librarian, $5,285.77. Library Assistant, $6,494. Library Assistant Evening, $7,932. Assistant Director, $4,650. Going into vacation buyback, $572.04. Sick time buyback, $1,484.73. Reference Library Assistant, $1,814. Reference Library Assistant Evenings, $1,411. Reference Library Assistant Evenings, $7,932. Vacation buyback, $925. Sick time buyback, $3,725. Again, the total we're looking at this evening is $24,362.77. Item is up for discussion. With us is the director of our library, longtime director, Maria Pagan. How many years? 30?
Well, I've been with the Holyoke Public Library. It's going to be 35 years. I've been the director about 25.
Well, welcome again. Maria, could you run us through this? I know we've had some discussions recently, but could you, for the purpose of this evening's vote, we can only vote on what's in front of us. Can you explain to us what's going on?
Oh, there, but
Is it on? Okay.
there you go.
I don't like microphones, so that's why. Since July, the new fiscal year for 19 to 2020, I had 4 key people leave the library, all based on, of course, the salary, as you know. So we have, I've been trying since August to get somebody for the children's library assistant position that works nighttime. And I have not been able to get anybody at $11.53 an hour. So that's why I'm asking to transfer some of that money to the reference library assistant, which is a little higher than the $12 an hour, to see if I can get somebody at that rate. Because right now, the children, the youth is the one suffering, because those are the people that have left the library.
So the children's librarian is open?
Yes. No, not the children's librarian. It's the youth, the teens, but they are under the children's librarian.
Okay.
So I had 2 children's librarians. One would take care of the children under 13, and the other one would take care of the children over 13 to 18.
In the transfer, you're removing money from your line item
yeah.
for children's librarian.
Yeah,
Why is there a surplus there?
because the person left.
Okay, that's what I said.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I'm sorry.
have
yeah.
you filled it?
No, I haven't found
Okay.
anybody
No,
yet
that's
for that
okay.
one
That's why
either.
when I said open, that's what I meant.
Yeah,
And then the library assistant daytime is open?
no,
why is
that
there a-
one, he also left. So that's why I'm taking
Okay.
that money and putting it into the reference to see if I can find somebody at a little higher pay rate.
And library assistant evening?
Yeah, it would be the same person that works the afternoon towards the evenings. There are 2 different rates.
So those 2 are per diem? Yeah.
Yeah,
Pay 'em
it's an hour.
For the hours they work. So do you have enough money left after the transfers, you have enough money left in the account for the rest of the year when you start filling in those positions?
I'm hoping. Because right now, I've been without filling that position for 3-4 months since August. So there's still some money there that it will be enough.
And what's the status of the assistant director?
I haven't filled that one yet. I can't find anybody for that one either.
Okay. Okay, so why don't we go first with the vacation buybacks? The sick time buybacks, is all this for the people that left?
Yes, one for the children that left that would take care of the over 13 and the assistant director.
Okay. And then the reference library assistant is different positions than the ones that you're taking the money from?
Yes, I didn't have anybody, that's why I didn't ask for money in the budget. I didn't have anybody under the reference because everybody was under library assistant. But at that rate, I cannot find somebody, so I'm trying to get somebody at the pay rate of reference.
That pay rate is established,
Yes,
correct?
it's in the ordinance,
Okay.
yeah.
And you're hoping to use that,
Yeah.
get you through the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Maria, have you talked with the mayor about more of a long-term solution and how you might be able to help you out budget-wise to?
Yep, just yesterday I met with Hector and Bellamy, and we are working on supplying another ordinance request change for the salary.
Okay, Bellamy,
Bellamy Smith,
in what capacity?
board member.
As your board member?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that, because
Yeah.
he's been wearing a lot of hats these past
Yeah.
3 years. Okay, any other discussion, any other questions? Counselor Murphy?
Yeah, and I'm all in favor of trying to get better pay and you know, when I hear people making $11 an hour and putting in some good hours, I certainly want to go. And my only question here, and maybe it's just they weren't in the budget, so the reference library assistant 51102 was not currently in the budget, but I'm assuming there must have already been a code for that before, and that's how you got that code?
Yeah, we had one many years ago, and then we weren't filling that position, so we were just doing with the library assistant, the reference librarian, and everybody else.
Okay, and that would be the same for the reference librarian assistant evening?
Yeah, because it's the same one, it's just the hours that they work, it goes towards the evening hours.
Okay, so I'm fine with it as long as it's not being challenged by not being in the budget, so. But I agree, I mean, I've met with Maria before, and, you know, I mean, people wanting to do a good job deserve to get a pay that makes them want to stay, and I know there was a couple of people that did approach me and talked about wanting to but couldn't afford to, so that's something we need to think about if we, and I mean, the library is outstanding, but obviously people make it more outstanding, so I thank you for your efforts, and I hope
Thank
this
you.
goes through.
Counselor Donlin?
Yeah, just a brief question. Thanks, Maria, for coming down and for your work with the library over the years. These people that had left, were they long-term employees, or had they been there for a while, or?
One, the assistant director was 15 years with us, and the children's, for the teens, she was 5 years.
Right.
The custodian, also 5 years, and then the children's library assistant, around 1 year. When he came into last July, and then in January, he thought he was gonna go to the $12 an hour, and when he found out that he was not, then he started to look, and then he was gone by August.
Right, yeah, I think that's important, I mean, we've seen over the years how we lose some people because the pay isn't there, and it's important, especially people that have been here 5, 10, 15 years, I think, try to keep those employees here, and I think that's something we have to look at in the future with the
And that's
the
what
next
we're
budget
working
year.
on. Yeah, to,
that-
once again, try to submit it. We've been trying to do this since 1999 with Tom Schwab, and then
Over
with
time,
Terry,
yeah.
and then again with Terry Plum. So we're going to try to do it once again. So it's been like 20 years that we've been trying to change the salary
The
schedule.
salaries, yeah, okay, thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? Joining us is Counselor Bresnahan. If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the transfer?
Motion made second to approve the transfer. I recommend this to the full city council next Tuesday evening. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Maria, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Don't expect to be number one all the time now. Number two might be a little bit of surprise, too. Certainly, our engineer has not gone first or second in a long time, if I remember.
Yeah.
Introduced under my name, this is an order with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A. The City Council accepts the provisions of the Municipal Energy Technical Assistance Program grants, authorizes establishment of a fund or other method appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with the administration of said grant. Did anybody notice the chairman read that language a little bit louder this evening?
Which one? Accounting?
The accounting of the receipts and expenditures of the resources of the associated with the administration of said grant. People are going to be hearing us reading that a lot louder in days to come. We'll explain that in a second, Bob. Thank you for coming in. Could you, on the motion to take off the table for discussion, all those in
So moved,
favor?
aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Could you walk us through the grant? I think you know what we look for up front. Is there any matching, what it means, when it's implemented, and when you're going to use it?
Sure. There's no matching funds involved. This is a straight grant. It's a grant that was offered by the Mass Department of Energy Resources, specifically focused on water and wastewater facilities, with the goal of conducting energy evaluations of facilities that consume energy. In this case, we applied for funding to take a look at the Jones Ferry and Smiths Ferry pumping stations, which haven't been upgraded since the 70s. They're effectively the same as what they were built at that point. One thing to note about this particular funding program and the approach is it's not just looking at things like putting in more efficient light bulbs or doing the ordinary type of things. It's really taking a holistic look at the station, at the equipment. Is there a better approach? Is there a better way to better style type of equipment, a better solution effectively? Sometimes what we see in these old pumping stations is they were designed with a particular goal in mind. The city may have developed or may not have developed in the manner that it was intended back in the 1970s, and taking a fresh look at that and putting in something that makes more sense, that ultimately may be able to be paid for by energy savings, so that the city ultimately, as the owner of the equipment, because although we contract with Suez to operate the equipment and they have to maintain the equipment that's there, we ultimately own the equipment. So if we're able to find a way to put in newer, better, more equipment that does a better job long-term, the city ultimately is better off as well. It's a $12,500 grant to look at those two pumping stations. The work has to be completed before the end of the fiscal year, and as I said before, there's no match.
Bob, is it if the grant is accepted, $12,500 is up front and you spend it and account for what you spend for, or do you have to spend the money and then get the money reimbursed?
It is like most funding programs, a reimbursement program, but the reimbursement turns around pretty quickly.
And who's responsible in the DPW for overseeing the expenditures and overseeing the reimbursement?
Myself.
Has there been any problems in recent years since you've been here with deficiencies for a grant?
Definitely not. I think you can check with Tanya. I believe we move things very quickly and know that the end of the fiscal year comes up. We need to make certain that we get everything in well before that deadline.
The reason I ask is we just learned in the past week and a half that other departments have deficiencies, some major deficiencies, like a total of $1.7 million over the last several years. And the Department of Revenue has stepped in and called the city on those deficiencies. And we think it's important, and that's why I read the language a little bit louder than normal, because that's standard language, that each department, and Tanya already gave you the nod, you already got the good look. Each department, each person who, department that the grant is the beneficiary of the grant, that the work is not just accepting the grant and spending it, it's accounting for it and making sure that everything is done in a timely fashion so as not to lose any reimbursement and not to overspend the grant itself. So with the approval of the auditor, we can go forward. Is there any other discussion? Any other questions? Councilor Tallman?
I just want to make a motion to accept the grant.
Motion made and second to accept the Municipal Energy Technical Assistance Program grant Recommend that to the full city council next week. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. And Bob, I believe you have the next one also?
I don't
Or not?
believe so.
No, Marcus has the next one, right? Bob, do you have anything else before we let you
I
go?
am done.
All right.
So thank you.
Because
very much.
other chairmen of committees don't always do that for you. I've seen you get up and have to come back. The finance committee takes care of our engineer.
I appreciate it.
Motion
Thank
to- Motion to take item number 3 off the table for discussion.
So moved. In order that, within accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the City Council hereby accepts the provisions of the fiscal 2020 Planning Assistant Grant to authorize the establishment of a fund and/or other method appropriate for the accounting of receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with the administration of said grant. Off the table for discussion, with us is our Planning Director, Economic Development Director, Marcus Marrero. Marcus, welcome. If you could walk us through this real quick, is there a match, how much the grant is for, what you're going to use it for, and any timetable?
Sure. So I'm playing designated hitter. Originally, this grant was applied for by Andrew Smith, who's no longer with us. So we've inherited this grant. It was awarded just after he left, or the week that he was about to leave. This is
Andrew
Smith, former
I'm
conservation
sorry.
director. This is a grant for $39,465. The intent is to support a Harvard Graduate School of Design studio work led by world-renowned landscape architect Martha Schwartz and 12 students. As I said, it's to support the studio work, so it's not a direct payment to Harvard itself. Their labor comes free. It would be to support a site visit on behalf of, that they would all visit Holyoke, stay for several days, supplies, materials, printing, and some paid professional design, which would complement the work by the students. This is from the Department of Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. Comes to the city. It is on a reimbursement basis. It doesn't require any monetary match. It requires only an in-kind match. Actually, we could provide monetary match, but we're not doing that. In the form of 25%. So just under $10,000 match. It's self-reporting on our staff time. Most of that will be with some logistical supports on the ground, some of the standard just project management, talking to them as if they were our consultant, explaining the lay of the land, our plans, and logistical support when they come here. They will have 3 deliverables as part of their studio work. One is a high-level concept or vision plan for how green infrastructure can allow Holyoke to be more resilient in the face of climate change, in particular for 2 expected impacts to the city. One is the heat island effect, which, because we're built with hardscape, the heat effect in a city is much larger than in a suburban or rural area. And the second is how to address increased precipitation events. One of the predicted effects of climate change in the New England region is, while we would have more drought in some parts of the year, in other parts of the year we would have increased precipitation. So how to avoid urban flooding and the heat island effect, both with green infrastructure. The second deliverable is to have more specific concepts for 12 sites that we could follow up with in the future, kind of identify low-hanging fruit or high-value targets where we could implement some innovative solutions in terms of design. The third deliverable would be what they call an urban carbon calculator. So how that green infrastructure could would be a measure for sequestration of carbon from the atmosphere. The carbon calculator is pretty well developed at a higher level, but kind of testing this out for an urban metropolis. That's the overall view of the project. Again, summary, about $40,000 grant, 25% match, which will just be staff time, mostly clerical help, data gathering, project management. And the project will be completed by the summer, the end of June.
Marcus, I know it's within the explanation, and thank you for the explanation of the grant and for filling in for Andrew. And I'm just going to ask you just a little bit different, just to summarize the benefit the city's going to get. I know it's already been in your explanation, but
Yeah.
what's the big benefit the city's going to get from this?
Well, it's beginning in earnest our high-level planning for how do we adapt to climate change. There's a series of impacts that we know we're going to get. We've had some municipal vulnerability planning on identifying what are the threats to Holyoke, like other cities have done. And we know that the heat island effect and how to deal with stormwater and high rain events, those have been at the top, if not the top two issues. And so we're trying to identify, in a cheap way for us, trying to get an initial framework for how we can explore projects that will mitigate that going forward.
Thank you. And you heard, I think, what I said to our city engineer, and I think you're somewhat aware of what's going on with the DOR and deficiencies within grants and things that have happened where reimbursements have been lost for different reasons. How is the planning department, economic development department, and conservation department doing in that area?
I don't know how Conscom is doing. I know we manage grants all the time. I think with the exception of one in a recent list that I saw that was pending reimbursement. That was a long pending. We've already discussed that with Mass DOT. It was related to the $4.3 million project at the rail station. There was like something around 30 or 60,000. I don't remember the exact number that was still pending. It was like the last invoice. So we've already started that conversation. That was brought to our attention by the auditor.
Pending, meaning we're still in line to receive it?
Yes, they still owe us that, but there was some issue with approving the paperwork on the line items from the construction that we're
Okay,
trying to dig
and what year would that have been?
The invoice from 2016 or 2017, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask a question. We only found out about it by our outside auditor, or you were aware of it and working with the DOT?
I was not aware of it until the internal auditor brought it to my attention.
Okay.
I don't know if they found out because of the external auditor, but
If we're going to continue to accept grants, we need upfront promises from people in positions of the grants or designated people that are, responsible for the administration of grants to know this and not to wait for the outside auditor to say you're owed money.
absolutely. And what I would say is that it's an oddity in our case. We manage so many grants on the daily. Just today, 2 more grants are being filed. We've managed millions of dollars in grants and dozens of them over my tenure. I believe that's the only outstanding one that we have at this point. Not an excuse for it, but just putting it in context.
I've got 3 smiling faces. You get 2.5 from Tanya, so we'll accept that as a good answer. Any other discussion, any other questions? Councilor McGee.
Quickly, once the study's done, I know of some grants, when the studies are done, it allows us to then use that study for other grants to bring in money to address the problems.
Yep.
Would this happen with this type of study?
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of the intent with when the state provides these planning grants, they kind of expect to line stuff up for asks. The Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program in particular is one where the state has increased the total pot of funding. I would expect that we could go for something in that program. We actually have 2 grants pending from them. I have a good feeling, but I don't know if we're going to get them this round. It would put us in a good position for next fall's submission to submit for something.
Councilor President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Marcos, real quick question. 2 of them. One of which is, do you foresee any ramifications on accepting a grant like this? Like, in other words, if they have any findings, would it prevent, businesses perhaps from coming in due to they realize something's in the atmosphere, assuming that this is about global warming, correct?
It's about the effects of climate change in Holyoke particularly, how to address them.
Right, so I mean, do you foresee that there would be any ramifications, or could you see any ramifications with, the study turning, not having good news?
No, not really. I think all the bad news we see in the press right now, it's kind of like how do we at a local level take the action so that we're not affected by the climate that's going to affect the infrastructure we have now. Bear in mind, most of the infrastructure we have now, you all know this, it's really old, and it was designed to meet 10-year storms or 500-year storms that are now, the old 500-year storms are now the 10-year storms. So that everyone knows, or at least the information is out there. What the recommendations would lead to is, all right, how could we find the low-hanging fruit or high-priority projects, right, that could create an impact to mitigate that.
Thank you.
Councilor Tallman.
Yeah, just briefly, thank you, Marcos, for coming down tonight. And again, this grant. Now, when would this? You'd have to be used by the end of June next year.
Yeah.
When would it start after the vote is taken?
First week of February, if it's approved, because it goes with their semester.
With their school semester.
Yeah.
Okay. And you stated that the match will basically be staffing,
Yes,
helping,
with
assisting,
staff time,
and will this be a report made that would be allowed when it's done to the city
Absolutely.
council to? Because I know a lot of grants, sometimes we have things, the police grants or fire grants, and we don't see the results of them, the traffic studies or traffic stops. And I think we've made basically like a rule to find out, when these grants are done and completed, that there's a report issued. And is there a way that follow up on that? I mean, will it come to your department or?
Yeah, I think I had that question at the last grant acceptance, and I said, well, if there's an ordinance that I have to write a report, then I have to write a report. But also particularly in this grant, part of the intention is not only is the document public, part of these deliverables is there will be a public presentation. Like there's actually going to be an event where the
results
are presented. Yes.
That'll be good, because sometimes we forget. We get grants, and is this followed completely? Did they sort of meet the objectives that they meant to go out and do? So I think that's important that we find this out, and we'll know that by next year sometime after it's completed.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councilor Sullivan.
Thanks. Marcos, so you said, even though there's no cash match, you said there's a in-kind $10,000 match, and I take this is office staff time? Mm-hmm. So obviously in your schedules and the people that work under you, this is going to take them away from other projects, ongoing ones now. How will that affect your current workload, adding this to it now?
The way I see it is we're double dipping into some of the stuff that we would be doing in 2020 already. So it's not, if it's 200 hours between everyone in the city that's doing something like that, roughly, it's not 200 new hours. A lot of our match on project management is aligned with what we are going to try to be doing with towards the MVP program anyway in the year 2020. A lot of the data resources that we're going to be providing, we can account for the work that we've already done on it to provide that. So I'm not worried. This is not going to be a heavy lift for us.
Okay, and the 39,000, is this the same? We're fronting that and then getting reimbursed as this money is spent by the Harvard group?
Yeah, that's, to be completely honest, I don't know, but I assume that that's the case. It's, some grant sources will front like 25%, and when you hit milestones, you get paid. With this small amount, I'm assuming it's just on a reimbursement basis.
Okay. So I just got questions about two others that are on this sheet we just received regarding the free cash. We had two other projects. Can you tell me if these were tied with the grants also? Valley Arena Park, which is showing a overdrawn account of almost 45,000, and a Brownfield 685 Main Street overdrawn of 26. Were those grants are those associated with grant monies that never came through?
The Valley Arena Park actually came in under budget. We had three sources for that. One was a park grant, one was CDBG funds, and the other was a city bond of up to $100,000. And the city bond was the last money we put in to it. Obviously, we wanted to save as much money on the city side as possible. So I'm going to assume that what you're seeing is that the account that was charged is at a deficit, but probably we have to fix the accounting so that that account is backfilled by the city bond. But we actually came in under budget on that one. We weren't over on the project. We wouldn't be owed anything. And that, as far as I know, all the monies have come in. If not, we definitely sent the reimbursements on time. What was the other one?
Well, if we did, it looks like the state went and yanked it out of our free cash anyways. Am I reading this wrong, Joe?
I'm not gonna comment on it. My understanding is $1.3 million of free cash was used by the Department of Revenue without our blessing. But other than that, I don't know how to say it. Our auditor's here if you wanna ask her.
I mean, I don't know what you're seeing on your sheet, but I know that project was under budget. I know that much. And the last money that we used was the city money.
I just don't see, and I'm not putting you on the spot.
Sure.
We'll ask the auditor when we get a moment here. I'll get to how something that's under budget comes in with a deficit balance. But
So, first of all, I want to say this Valley Arena is a grant because the debt bond for Valley is actually a separate fund. So, I think what you're saying is maybe we charge something off to the grant versus the bond, which is approved by the city council. That would be my guess. You would have to look at the expenses, obviously, like you said, and see if that happened.
Yes.
And unless people are looking in munis and making sure that the correct expenses are hitting the correct funds, and I know that you know this because I do work with your department and you're very good about it, but I'm not gonna know that. So if you wanna take a look at it and that would be wonderful.
Yeah, it goes to the mechanics of it, and, you know, prior to Tanya coming on board, the direction I was given was charge the grant fund, which will go into a deficit greater than the grant, and we can backfill that account from monies from CDBG and the city-approved bond, right? You don't, as soon as the bond is approved, you don't go out and bond for $100,000 that the treasurer can backfill. Whether that was correct or not, I don't know, but that's what you're seeing right now. That needs to be backfilled with another account.
okay, so Tanya, debits on the left, credits on the right. So when that happens, would this money then go back into free cash that's being taken out of free cash?
Yes, if we can straighten it out, it won't come out this year. It will still come out of free cash this year because we've already had the opportunity to rectify the situation. And if you look on last year's, and I don't know about this one, but a lot of the accounts are the same, and as long as there's activity for the year, then they will take it out of free cash if it's in deficit at the end of the year. Even if the account is really old, if you do a journal entry and they see activity and it's in deficit, they will count that. So I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Makes no sense.
Well, if I.
I don't mean you make no sense. It makes no sense. And if that's what the DOR is doing,
That's what
we're
they
gonna
do.
need to get the DOR in here and figure this out
I'm
because
sure they would be happy
this
to.
makes no sense.
Now, and I had the conversation as well, and that's what I was told, is as long as there's activity and they don't know what it is, then if there wasn't activity, actually it would be worse, because what would happen is they would make you settle it.
So they're checking with the individual departments to see if there's activity?
No, they see the activity from the year-to-year transactional balance. So for example, if you started off with a $10 balance, and the account is from 2016 and you did a journal entry for $1, because they see that $1 activity and they see the balance change, they know that that account is active. So even though it's from 2014, if you did $1 of a journal entry every year, they would consider that active because they don't know.
That's accounting from the 1800s.
That's the DOR, so,
So, Mike's got a question.
of course.
Yeah, well, that and a couple of statements, I guess. It sounds to me like the state's playing whack-a-mole with us. You knock it down here and it pops up somewhere else. We've got to set a tax rate, right? We've got a supplemental budget coming. We got, we're given a number. They've just gone and arbitrarily done this. I'm looking at a number here, a bottom line of almost $1.8 million that maybe is just yanked out of free cash, and then this gets straightened out later, and it pops back into free cash. But we're making a decision on this money not being here, but it's gonna come back here.
We should be covering these deficits with our departmental budgets, actually. Every year, before the end of the year, which I did try to do, but the majority of the department heads were not willing to give up their departmental funds.
I know I'm getting away from the
And it's not,
grant that's in
Marcos.
front of us now, but it ties to, we're accepting something that's giving us a lot of problems right now. We're accepting more and more of it into the system. When we haven't straightened out stuff, there's another one in here from a refund due from 2011 of $50,000.
That actually is tax title. So all of those things are not all just grants, it's other things.
Yeah,
so.
no, I get that. So the Brownfields one, is that also a grant?
What, can you tell me
Associated
what
with
the
a grant?
title is, or?
It's a 685 Main Street, $26,213.
685?
Is that Armenia?
I don't know that. True.
I mean, I want to be helpful, what I remember from the list that I received, my department had maybe 4 or 5 things in question. From my memory, we resolved most, except for the one that I went into on the rail line, where we're talking to Mass DOT about that. Most of it were just minor accounting things. You know, one of them was like, we published something in the paper and hit the account, it wasn't in the budget. We should have used our advertising budget for that, we fixed that. So I could look at that in more detail with you if you'd like.
Okay. And with all due respect to Councilor Bresnahan, if I'm going to be looking at accepting more grants, and I'm seeing problems with other grants that we've already accepted, I'm going to ask those questions. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Councilor President.
My point, Counselor Sullivan, my friend and my colleague, is that you can't sandbag a department head when he comes down here. If you want questions to a certain issue, file an order. He's down here on a grant. He's not prepared. And the same thing happened to me as when I was a health director. You'd come down here to talk about one issue, and then everything came up. It's like, you're down, you don't know about the parks. You're not prepared to talk about that. You certainly could research it. You're a smart guy. He's down here to talk about one grant, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I think it's more of a political issue, the global warming thing. But it's like, ask him about that. Ask him about what's in front of him. Ask department heads why they're here and what's in front of them. We're off topic. It's not fair to the department head.
And
I'm not
your
gonna-
topic for the department head will be?
The grant that he's down here for. He's down here
You
to
got the floor.
He's down here to speak about one grant. We got the auditor up here talking about money somewhere that was spent somewhere that we lost. It's like, prepare the department heads for what you want to talk about, which is through filing orders. You're down here, Marcos, correct me if I'm wrong, for a global warming grant for have students to come down. Is that an accurate statement?
That's in the realm of what we're looking for in the order, correct?
Thank you.
And Marcus, you're in favor of this grant?
I am, yes.
And you'd like to see the city council adopt the grant?
I would have stayed
So
home.
do you think Councilor Sullivan's questioning was out of line, knowing that we have to be assured that this grant is going to be properly administered?
I respect the opinion of every council member in this chamber.
Good answer. Anything else?
Make a motion to accept the fiscal 2020 planning assistant grant.
Motion is made and seconded to accept the planning assistant grant, as explained by our very fine director of the planning department on behalf of the conservation department. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Marcus, got anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Item number 4 is a copy with the communication from our Assistant City Solicitor, Gina Haro. Am I saying it right, Gina? Haro, that's what I said. It's the memorandum of agreement with the Holyoke Police Supervisors, IBPO Local 409. Motion to take off the table for discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. I placed this on the agenda for a couple of reasons. There is nothing to date in the manner of an appropriation for which the city council could vote on to go with the memorandum itself. But I've had a number of calls, and I'm kind of surprised they're not here this evening, from the president of the local and from members of the local as to what the next step is. And I was hoping, I'd asked our auditor, and I talked a little bit with Gina about, where the funding's coming from. So Gina, do you want to walk us through the grant and what it's going to cost the city? And if the auditor and yourself could tell us where the money could be coming from, if the mayor has made a decision on that yet.
Okay, financially, what would the effects would be? There would be a 1% wage increase, retroactive to July 1st of this year, for fiscal year 20. And then there also would be a 0.5% increase for long gun distribution accountability, and for use of a defibrillator, I can never say that right, would receive a 0.5 increase as well. And for use of Narcan, they would receive a 1% one-time increase. They're ready to go with all that. They're definitely ready to start using the Narcan. So that's very important that we get that approved so that we can save citizens' lives, hopefully.
And on that line, can you just explain the superior officers that would actually use Narcan?
There's usually a superior officer that goes to every call. That's what I was told anyway. And if they have the Narcan in their vehicle, they can use it right there at that moment if they see somebody in trouble, and potentially save their life. And a lot of times the police are there before any type of fire department or ambulance, and sometimes mere seconds could be the difference in somebody living or dying.
Councilor McGee?
If that's just for the supervisors, are we going to put this for the regular officers?
That's in negotiation, but I believe that they are also looking for funds, for money in exchange for the use of Narcan.
It's going to be for everyone across the board.
That's the goal.
And what's the total cost on that is what I'm looking for.
I don't know what the total cost across the board would be. I believe that Tanya has the figures for what the total costs for this contract would be, but I don't have for
I'd like both.
for both.
I'd like both. Thank you.
The other thing that would affect finances, but not by very much, is there's like maybe a $15 or $20 increase in their reimbursement amounts when they're traveling for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It would just increase from 15 to 20 and to 30 instead of, I think it's just like a $20 difference per person. And that actually looks like those are the only increases. The other things just, the other thing that might affect is the vacation carryover. They just, members with less than 20 years may now carry over 7 vacation days, and members with 20 or more may carry over 10, so that might have a financial impact as well.
Well, the financial impact is both on the time comes when there's vacation buyback.
Correct.
And there's a financial impact when individuals are taking vacation days and people are filling in out of grade and being paid more or being paid overtime to fill in. So what would the financial impact be with this language?
I don't have the numbers. I believe the auditor has the numbers.
Just for the raises itself, within the captains, sergeants, lieutenants, it's like $69,000
For this fiscal year?
for this fiscal year.
Retroactive?
Additional. What's that?
Is it retroactive to
Correct, July 1st.
July 1st? And the 2% next year would be double that, approximately?
Well, the thing is, this year is they ended up, all of them, getting a 3% raise because it was 1%, across the board in general just for the contract, but with the Narcan, and I don't have a copy of the contract, but what's the training, Narcan, DFib, and something else? If you add up all the percentages, they all have that. So instead of 1%, it's 3%. So next year, it shouldn't be double that because they'll only get the 2%. It'll probably be around the same amount of money. See in the second paragraph, if you add it all, they all have those trainings and certifications.
Have we figured out where the $69,000 for this year is coming from?
The mayor will have it on his supplemental budget that we will put on the agenda
What
for the
supplemental
next
budget
meeting.
are we talking about?
Well, not the one that you have that you have tabled, but there will be another one that he is preparing.
And when will that be?
I think I will have it tonight, so I should be able to put it into city council tomorrow morning.
The agenda was, deadline is
Tomorrow at 11.
or 11.
11 a.m.
Can I ask a question on that?
Councilor McGee.
Kind of out of scope, but it kind of part too. So we're gonna get a supplemental budget sometime tonight, maybe tomorrow. Going through each and every line item, adding in certain spots, or,
Correct.
okay, and we're gonna get a breakdown of where things were added to?
Correct.
Okay, instead of doing that and causing havoc, which I can see happening, is there, and I asked this to our assessor, is there a spot in the budget that we can take and put one large appropriation, of which set a new tax rate based on that number, and then have it pushed to free cash after everything's approved, and then deal with it line item by line item so we get to watch it and see it correctly, instead of sitting here Tuesday night trying to do it all at once?
I feel like because of the way that you appropriate your budget, unless you want to have transfers processed from one line to an, I guess you could do it if you want to then in turn process departmental transfers.
You can do it. I know you can. My question is, where do we put the lump sum to then move it from there? That's where I don't know, and that's where I'm leaving up to you, please, and the assessor to get that answer tomorrow. Whether it's in the overlay account, and then you can move it to free cash, if DOR will let that.
We don't have free cash, so we can't.
I meant not free cash, to the general account to then put into free
I
cash.
think we could put it anywhere, actually. I don't think it makes a difference, but I can ask him
That's,
what
so
he would
instead
like
of
to do.
seeing tomorrow, several different line items where people are gonna fight over it, potentially, I'm just guessing,
I like the idea.
put one spot so that we can come back later. It makes it easier, and then it allows the council to actually deal with it over a period of time instead of a
Upon your request, I think that's a wonderful idea, and it will also save me a lot of work between now and then, so I do appreciate it as well.
That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
I like it, thank you.
I'm trying to stick with the $69,000 at hand. If that's in a supplemental budget, and we don't vote for the supplemental budget for whatever reason, because I don't think we have line item control over supplemental budget, maybe I'm wrong. If we don't vote for the entire supplemental budget, this contract is then null and void?
I
guess
was
that's
under
more of
the
a question.
impression that you would vote on the supplemental budget in the same way you vote on your regular appropriations, line by line?
I don't think so. Because remember, the regular appropriations is that 45-day period, whereas the only time we have line item control over the budget.
Interesting.
So I'm kind of asking, and we haven't had a supplemental budget of this magnitude in a long time, probably ever. So I think those questions need to be answered, because whatever supplemental budget is going to be passed, if it's going to be passed, needs to be done before we set the final tax rate, which is the classification vote. So if we don't pass the budget, supplemental budget, and we pass tax classification, that money's gone for the year.
Yes.
And does that make this contract null and void?
Yes.
Well, any other questions for our Assistant City Solicitor, Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah. I think I heard, I'm looking for it, I'm not good at looking over your shoulder there, Joe, but either for the solicitor or the auditor, there was one line item, a 0.5% additional also for long gun?
That's correct.
What's that about?
I honestly don't know exactly what it is, but I know that they're in charge of distributing certain rifles and keeping track of them, and I guess it's an additional duty that was added to what they do.
Having guns for the police department is an additional
It's a
duty?
different kind, honestly, I wish the chief was here because I'm not exactly sure, but this was something that he wanted. He wanted long gun distribution to be an additional responsibility for the supervisors. And I don't believe it has to do with just regular police guns. I believe it's a special task, but I don't know the specifics, unfortunately.
And this is just for handing out a certain particular type of gun?
I think it involves more than that. I think it involves a whole inventory, and again, I don't know the specifics, but it is something that is involved, and that's why the chief wanted it, and he thought it was worth the additional 0.5% to have them have that duty basically forever now.
I think having guns is a duty of police officers all the time.
But it's not just guns, it's some kind of specific
What's the dollar?
task.
What does the dollar total of that 0.5% equate to?
I don't have that information.
So we don't have a line item breakdown on,
Put it all together.
just a piece of the 69,000?
I can get it for you though.
Should we table it until they come in?
I'm surprised they're not here.
Did they get notice? I mean,
They did know, in fact, I spoke to their union representative yesterday and today, so they knew. They also knew that there wasn't going to be any action on it because there's no funding, so perhaps that's why they're not here.
just
Think all
make a
we do is
motion to table so they can come in.
There's no further discussion. The motion is to table. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is an agreement between the city and City of Holyoke and Action Ambulance Service Incorporated for emergency ambulance services. Jeannie, are you here for this one too? I know, I understand. I thought her email said you were going to assist. Maybe I'm wrong. Motion to take off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. I know our solicitor, acting city solicitor, did send us an email, or sent Ryan an email, that she cannot be here because of the evening and a family commitment. But we have before us a contract that I believe needs our ratification. And I was hoping we could go through it before we made any decisions.
Unfortunately, I wasn't aware that I'd be handling this, so I don't have the contract in front of me.
Make a motion to table until,
Second.
If there's any discussion before we act on a motion to table? Any thoughts on what we need to hear? Councilor Murphy?
Yeah, just two things. I mean, I know it says we would negotiate the garaging, and I'm assuming, and I was wondering if somewhere in here, and I didn't find it, if there was, part of this was continuing the garaging in the fire stations where we get, I think it's $3,600 a month.
Right, yeah.
Which then we've used to fix up the roof in the fire station. I don't see that. It just says it's negotiable, so I do think that would be one of the things I would wonder about. And then I think it mentions 3 units, 2 advanced units and 1 basic life support unit, and yet I think they're at every fire station, if I'm not mistaken. So is the contract lessening the amount of ambulance service we're getting? That would be another question I would have.
my biggest question, that's why I want to table it, is what have we collected in rent
Thus far.
past? Because they've been there for a while and we didn't have a contract. And then, you have all those numbers? Okay.
So I know, like, I was here for the previous meeting where we discussed it, and they actually had owed us quite a bit of money. So in 2019, they did pay us $81,257, and in 2020, they also paid additional from past, but they are paying the $3,600 on a monthly basis. So for right now, we have $26,832 that they've paid.
Have they caught up on what they owe us?
I'm not really sure because I don't have a copy of the signed contract either. So, I mean, I could find that out easy enough.
That's
Absolutely.
the ongoing question as to they owed in the rears. Have they caught up on that?
I believe they have, but I don't want to say
I
for sure.
do believe when we passed something last time, it was a requirement that they be paid up prior to any other action.
I can't say for sure what the previous balance was, but I can tell you that they do pay the $3,600 on a monthly basis.
That's why I want this table.
It looks like it, but I can't say
Tanya,
for sure.
who is responsible for the ongoing oversight of this contract? You know, DPW is responsible for our fire department buildings. Fire department is responsible for what goes on in those buildings. And the contract was negotiated with the mayor, as always, and with the assistance of the law department.
The money goes in the fire department revolving fund,
I understand, but who's responsible for,
fire department.
okay, and they're not here this evening? So without a contract, Gina, is the ambulance gonna have to leave the fire department? Well, I think there's some liability questions as to, you know, their existence in city property without a contract.
I don't have any information on the contract. I don't know when the previous one expires and when this one was supposed to be effective.
There was no previous one.
That's my whole point.
Oh.
They didn't have a contract or in the garages. Or in the stations, sorry. So,
Well, if we could get those answers, we would appreciate it. And maybe we can have a meeting somewhere in the future to be able to act on this to avoid liability issues and to get the money that the city is owed. Anything else? Motion to table, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Your
Item number
motion.
6, introduced by
Number
Councilor McGee. We've taken this up a couple times, just wanted to see where we were. It's in order that the city impose an excise tax on Airbnbs.
motion to remove from table?
Second.
So moved, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So, Councilor McGee.
We did get a notice from legal saying that it is in place. My question is, are we collecting on it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
The excise tax on Airbnbs, have we collected on it? And at what rate?
So the Airbnbs come through the state, and we have not collected any revenue on that as of yet. We didn't even set up an account yet for it. So as soon as we receive that money from the state, we'll start tracking it, but we have not received any yet.
Has anyone reached out to the state as to when they're going to start sending money?
I'm not really sure. I know that there was an email between the tax collector and a couple other departments, and in the end, they asked if they had collected anything from the state yet, and I checked our records, and we had not.
So since June of this year, it went into place, the legislation, or last year?
I'm not positive about that. I know that they said that we shouldn't expect it we shouldn't have expected it now, but it should be coming in this year's budget, is what I got out of it.
Do we know what rate it's at?
I have no idea.
Because the city has to approve it at a rate. I mean, we learned that from the mayor, LaChapelle, and they went to the highest rate of 6%. Are we at 6%?
I've not been involved in that, so I can't really answer
No,
that.
I'm not blaming you. These are the things
Oh,
that
that's a
I've been asking.
rhetorical question? I don't know that
These are the things I've
answer.
been asking now. It's the third time coming up. So that's the frustration I'm having.
Who puts that forth to the council?
Puts what forth?
If you have to vote on that, I'm assuming it has to be put on the agenda, right? So who would do that?
So
I
what
can speak to them.
Yep, so what happened in the past was this wasn't ever an option. We had to wait for the governor to approve it. So I filed the order to approve it, but it got delayed because it sat at the State House. Then it sat in our committee because we hadn't heard anything yet, and then it was passed, I think it was in June, from what Councilor Leahy said, but no communication came to the council.
So what can I do to assist you, I guess,
I
is
would
my
love
question.
to know, from what legal said is, it is in place under a prior ordinance that we've
Okay.
had, or whatever ordinance we had would encompass this. Therefore, if it is in place and we are collecting on revenues, when's it coming in? At what rate is it at?
Okay.
And when do we expect the first installment? And I'll follow up with other orders as to how we're really tracking how many B&Bs we have within the city. I know the assessor's trying, because he goes online and searches, but is there another way where we make them file to get a permit or something so we can track them and tax them accordingly?
Okay.
That'll be my order, but the other ones I would like answers.
Well, I can just follow up with the departments just to see where we're at and let them know that you brought it up and what your questions are.
Right. Thank you.
No problem.
Any further discussion?
Just a quick question to Todd.
Councilor Murphy?
So are they being taxed based on the hotel tax? Is that what our rate would be based on our ordinance?
It was set by the state in the sense of, I mean, you could call it, if you want to compare it to something, it'd be like a hotel tax.
But if we actually file, because I know you said the city solicitor said the ordinance is already in place, well,
I think they're comparing it to the hotel one.
okay.
But this one was different. It was just approved from, once again, what Councilor Leahy said in June. And from what the mayor of East Hampton says, you can go up to 6%,
Yeah.
which is what they did in order to help deal with their school issues.
Yeah.
I want to know where we are on our percentage.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, but it would seem to me like we would need to do an ordinance which would create a specific tax on that as opposed to just piggybacking. And
I agree.
if legally they aren't considered a hotel,
I agree. I'm just going by what the legal opinion
Yep.
was emailed to us.
We can't set any taxes as a municipality. No municipality can. We have to go by the taxing scheme the state sets. But I think the answer is, like the hotel tax, is the language needs to be accepted by the municipality. And the law department is telling us that it's already done, but it doesn't appear that it has been done.
Correct.
well, we would be allowed, isn't there a range that you can tax based on the state law? If you want to, you don't have to, but if you wanted to, you can go from here to here,
Correct, that's,
Yeah.
which we think.
We were actually hoping it could be, addressed by assessors and property tax. I don't want to speak for Councilor McGee, but we've had this discussion, but we were told that the state's going to handle it separately because there's so many people looking at this across the state. And it's just, I mean, it's happening everywhere. It's not just Massachusetts. And it's, I don't, Airbnbs, Ubers, Lyfts, they're,
I'm going over for those too, Joe. We're
next
still
thing you know, people are going to be making money on social media, Billy. I don't get it. It's like,
I'll make a motion to table it until we get the answers.
all right.
I'll second
Motion
that.
made, second to table, and we'll try to get some answers, light some fires. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Motion to take item number 7 off the table for discussion.
Introduced by Council President, in order that the tax collector provide the city with the top 100 property owners that are delinquent or are not current with the city Hoyoke tax bill. Please provide the updated list to the council within 30 days of this order. Off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. We did receive an email on this, and for some reason, and I can't answer why, we can't print this list. Deanne, would you like to say something? It's your order.
Am I on that email? I
That I don't know. I'm going by our administrative assistant,
just,
and
To Ryan, and then if he sent it to everybody.
Ryan, could you come out and join us for a minute?
I don't have any emails regarding this matter. Unless I'm missing something here.
The reason I put it on the agenda tonight is hoping the tax collector would be here, and I thought I was made aware that we did have the list. And But Ryan, I'm sorry, could you just hop behind us and get on a mic? Yeah. Our administrative assistant, Ryan Allen.
Yeah, so I forwarded it to the committee. I apologize, I missed you, Dan, in that email, but I can do that right now and send that over. I can also bring out my computer if you want to go through it and look at the names. It's just that it's kind of an extended spreadsheet, so to put it into like in a printable form, it's going to print out 42 pages and it's not going to line up the way it should. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but if you looked at it, you might be able to see it's just a kind of a long spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So we have it, just wasn't printed.
Yeah, I mean,
And if I did print it the way that it is, I think I can bring out my computer and show you guys, and you can take a look at it. But I think it would come out very strange looking because it's like again really wide.
can you
You
just
don't-
forward it to me? Just
Yeah,
forward it
yeah,
to me.
yeah,
I mean,
I'll forward it to you.
it's orders comply with as far as I'm concerned. Unless, I mean, I just want to see it. I mean,
I'll send it to you right now.
And Council President, I apologize, I missed that you weren't part of the email. And Ryan, the whole city council should be part of those emails. Because once we accept the maker of orders request, the whole city council takes ownership. And most people, I think, want answers because they are good orders. Deanna, you sure it's complied with? Did you need anything
I'm
else?
fine with it. Yeah, I
Okay.
just want to see it. Thank
Okay,
you.
any other discussion? Okay, and we also not only have to make it a copy for all of us, that list should be made public because this is a public meeting and we're accepting public information. So we'll make sure that list is made public for anyone who wishes to see a copy of it. On a motion, now that the order's been complied with, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Can that be put online? Like,
I
I
would
is that
think-
one way of
would think so.
I know it could, I'm just saying, is there
I don't know if
any
it's
way
up-
that he could do that, like,
Yeah,
actually?
I think we should ask the city council at the next meeting if that's what we want to do, and because it is ownership of the tax collector, make sure that that's allowed, or not allowed, but that's appropriate, the way it's done.
I think in the past, it's been published in the newspaper, hasn't it?
That's why, if we make it public, then it certainly can be published in the newspaper, because it's certainly a public record. Item 7A.
Motion to take number 7
Second.
off the table for discussion.
This is a transfer request from our building department, $7,808.47, paid chief of wires to inspections electrical. This has been an ongoing situation with the building department. The reason I didn't ask to adopt it at the city council meeting was I had an unanswered question, which I now have an answer. But just a reminder, this position has been unfilled for some time now. There was I think there was even an upgrade to a master electrician salary recently, but Damian Cody is still trying to fill the position. So when he needs the electrical inspector, he hires a retired individual who has been doing the work per diem, and this is the amount that is currently owed to the person who has been doing the work per diem. The question I didn't have an answer for is if he were to hire someone today, would there be enough money left in the account to get through the year? The answer from Mr. Cody today is that yes, he would have enough money if he hired someone for the rest of the year.
Motion is to approve.
Motion made
I'll
second to
second.
adopt. Any other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. And our final item of the night, and we thank our guest of honors who came in at 7:30, is item number 8. This is in order, a sum of $6,540,000 be appropriated to pay the cost of a capital planning project known as the water main replacement and the payment of all costs incidental and related hereto, in that we meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow said amount under pursuant Chapter 44, Section 7, subsection 1 of the general laws, or pursuant to any other enabling authority to issue the bonds, and notes the city, therefore, that the mayor authorizes the contract for to expend any state aid available for the project to offset the bond, that the mayor is authorized to take any other action necessary to carry out the project. Motion on the floor is to receive, take off the table for discussion. We have our executive director of the water department and commissioner chairman this year, Bill? And the chairman of the water commission with us this evening. We've gone through this, So we're going to ask you for a update on the request. This actually was a request after what happened, partly because of Fairfield Avenue, but partly because of the information that was relayed to us in terms of other deficiencies within the distribution system itself. So may I suggest that you have the floor for 5-10 minutes and give us an update, and certainly then open it up to questions and we can get answers.
I provided the committee with some handouts, just to give you a narrative on the request.
Absolutely. And I think maybe I'll just update as we're about to go into the discussion. The water department is not an enterprise fund. The water department exists under accepted state statute by the city, exists on the user rate. The water department, by that statute, similar to the gas and electric department, not so much similar to the sewer department, but close to it, needs the umbrella of the city to bond. But the bond is subject to the users, the rate payments that come in. Therefore, the rate must meet the general budget of the water department itself. Even though the city is bonding for this, because we do have responsibility for the water department, the gas and electric department, it does not have a direct impact on our bonding ability for city-side bonding itself, because the water department becomes financially responsible for it. However, you do need the endorsement of the mayor and the city and the treasurer to go forward. Sorry. The microphone is yours, David.
Fine. I just wanted to just give you a brief overview of the status of this project and then address your other concerns with regards to fire protection. But the bond authorization request in the amount of $6.54 million includes the replacement of an additional 16,050 feet of old undersized cast iron water pipe with new 8 and 12-inch ductile iron cement line pipe to improve flow capacity and reduce water quality issues in the public water distribution system. The project is in addition to a previously approved bond authorization in the amount of $13.39 million for capital planning projects that included, in part, the replacement of approximately 17,900 feet of old undersized cast iron water pipe, estimated at $6.48 million. Construction under both bond authorization, if approved, will be combined and performed in 3 phases, with construction under Phase 1 anticipated in summer-fall of 2020, construction for Phase 2, which will be scheduled for summer-fall of 2021, and Phase 3 following in the summer-fall of 2022. Phase 1 water main replacement is scheduled to run concurrently with the City of Holyoke's CSO project and Holyoke's Housing Authority MassWorks Infrastructure Grant Program in the South Holyoke area and will be coordinated through the City Engineer's Office. Water rates are anticipated to increase from the current rate of .4709 per 100 gallons to .5909 per 100 gallons, or 12 cents per 100 gallons, a 25.5% increase phased in over a 3-year period to fund the bond authorization totaling $19.93 million if approved. With regards to some of the concerns that were raised at a prior Public Safety Committee meeting, the Water Department had installed 2 fire hydrants on Northampton Street, one on Northampton at Fairfield and one on Northampton at Morgan Street. Flow test calculations were conducted, and there is a large capacity of water available. Those hydrants were painted with the white pumper cap. So the fire department now has the ability to better fight fires on those streets until the improvement project goes forward in those particular areas in 21. There was also some flow test calculations that were done on Yale Street. There was concerns about fire protection for 11 Yale Street. We did some calculations on Yale at Park Slope, determined that main has sufficient water, but the piece or the portion on Yale Street that runs to the cul-de-sac does not, because there is a restriction there. That is currently under discussion by the board. So these projects right now are the $13.39 million bond authorizations projects are currently in the design stages. Phase 1 is moving forward. The construction of a new 0.5 million gallon water storage tank is also in the design stages, along with the improvements to the Whiting Street Reservoir spillway. We anticipate the construction of the Phase 1 to move forward, as I mentioned in the letter. We did receive a MassWorks grant. It was received through the Holyoke Housing Authority, and that will fund a replacement of the water main on Clemente Street from Adams, I think, to Sargent. So that is a benefit that the Water Department will be receiving, and working with the city engineer and the Housing Authority and consolidating these projects, there should be some savings realized in restoration work and pipe length. Any questions?
Councilor McGee.
So the Fairfield and Morgan, you put in the two at the top of Northampton Street. There were other areas that had flow problems, like, correct me, was it Morgan and Portland or wherever it was? Where were the other ones that had the same issue like Fairfield?
One of the worst areas in the city is Southeast Street.
Okay.
That's under Phase 1. That work was planned to work in conjunction with the CSO. Does it make sense for? Yes,
That's
that's
this
correct.
map?
Yes.
With the orange?
The orange is the work that's proposed under the $6.54 million project. We circled the areas so you could identify the various phases. So they're identified. All the areas that we've identified do have limitation problems. Some of the concerns we have is that you have an area that has a limitation and you don't have any supporting mains nearby. So what we did was we tried to design it in a manner where if we replace this particular section where there are streets that have undersized mains, this will provide supporting fire protection to those particular areas. You can't expect to replace all the pipe in the city of Holyoke. It would be not only irresponsible, it would be extremely costly. But the intent is to try to design it in a fashion that there are always supporting mains to reinforce these areas where there are some limitations. But for the most part, this will put the water system in very good shape going forward.
I understand that. I know it's gonna take time to do all the pipes over and get everything back to where it needs to be. My question, and I think you answered it, I just want the public to know, and when the press writes it, the areas of trouble, Fairfield being an example, we put in a main at the top in order to deal with the whole street in case something were to happen again. So water flow, although we have to do the other piping, there is protection in case of a fire. For all the other areas that are like Fairfield, do we have the same type of stuff put in, the same type of something on Northampton Street, the new hydrant, to deal with that until the piping's done? That's my question.
Some of the areas we do, some of the areas we don't, and we are working with the fire department. We've identified those areas. There are some areas that have limitations that cannot be corrected until supporting transmission mains are installed. One of the areas is St. Vincent, Peltia, Oscar Street, Jones Ferry. Is it Jones Ferry or Jones Ferry?
That's listed, yeah.
That particular area, fire protection cannot be improved until we replace that segment on Main Street. So that, all that area will go forward together as one particular unit. But we have identified these areas, and we are working with the fire department so that they know that if there is a fire on these areas that we've identified here, that there are supporting mains, what hydrants to go to.
All right, so although we haven't installed supporting hydrants yet, we're getting to those bad areas. There's other sufficient ways to deal with fires in that area until we get all the piping and everything else done.
That's correct.
All right, and the fire department is all caught up on that. Everyone's all on the same page. That's what I think the public wants to know. That everything's been identified, everyone's on the same page as to what hydrant needs to go to address the problem if it pops up. I think the people hearing that is what they wanted to hear, so thank you.
Councilor Murphy.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for coming, and I'm pretty sure you were also part of the MassWorks grant and coordinating the South Holyoke revitalization infrastructure-wise. So I'm assuming we're going to save some money off of these bonds. with the MassWorks project, right? Any idea as to how much we're gonna be able to save? Is that $500,000, $1 million?
Well, we're not sure, no, I wouldn't say in the order of $500,000, no, I'm thinking we could probably save in the order of $100,000 or less.
Okay.
We're looking at, as a result of Clemente Street going forward, there's a portion of Southeast Street that's planned to be turned into, it's gonna be, the roadway is gonna be removed, and it's gonna be like a park area with a bike path.
Right.
That particular area, we can remove that section of pipe that was originally proposed. So there's a savings there. We're looking at a couple hundred feet of pipe that could be eliminated at a savings of what Tie and Bond estimates, $345 a linear foot. And then there's also, as a result of that, there's also savings in other areas where the CSO project's moving forward. We're gonna be able to put a temporary patch in. There's a savings where we don't have to put a final patch in. So I don't have an exact dollar amount because we don't have those particular numbers as of yet, but there will be a savings if we coordinate it with the city and the housing authority.
And all of that is scheduled for completion in summer or fall, correct? Of next year?
Fall of 2020.
Okay. And just regarding what Councilman McGee talked about with St. Vincent and Pelty and all those streets, and I live on Main Street, so basically the fire department knows if there is a fire in one of those units, they need to go to a certain hydrant to be able to make sure they get maximum capacity? Is that basically the concept?
That's the concept that we've developed through the years, and you know,
And those areas are in line for 2022 completion, correct?
That's correct, that's correct. That's the last of the three
Right.
phases.
And that's what we just added with the additional 6 million, those were certain areas that had been noted as being deficient, so, okay, well, thank you very much.
Counselor Sullivan.
Thanks, David. So as I understand it, we've just recently finished paying off a $20 million bond. When did we finish that?
That bond matured in, well, there was actually two bonds. The $19 million bond matured in 2016, and the $2.68 million bond matured in fiscal year 2018. We have incurred a bond in the amount of $3.2 million under the ultraviolet program. That bond, we're actually in the second year of payments on that. It's a 20-year bond also. Those payments are in the order of $200,000 to $250,000 over the period of the schedule.
Yeah.
So that's the only bond going forward right now. All the other bonds, the 19 million, the 2.8 to 2.68, those have all matured, paid in full.
Yeah, I get that. So those were being paid under the existing water rate. Will this incur a need for an additional increase, or can this be handled within the current budget, the current rate that we're charging right now?
No, these two projects will require an increase in water rates of 12 cents or 25.5%. And the intent is to phase those increases over a 3-year period while the construction is underway. But the bond cannot support this type, our current budget cannot support this type of cost. You're looking at, in the order of just for the $13.39 million and the $6.58, you're looking at principal and interest payments of around $1.3 million per year, in addition to current bond payables of between $200,000 and $250,000. So you're looking at $1.5 million. Our current budget is $6.1 million. So that's about a 25% increase in expenditures that we're going to be incurring.
Okay, and why do we go with 20 years and not a longer period of time?
I don't think we make that determination. I think it's I think there are particular time periods for this type of work, similar to like buildings and structures. Water main work is typically 20 years. Infrastructure improvements.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I brought some samples here, and the rest of the members of the committee have looked at it already. Just so we talk about a lot of technical things here, and they've seen the pictures of some of the pipes that we've been discussing, and much to Joe's pleasure, I brought one in last year and laid it on the table here. But the piece we have for the guys here, that's a piece of modern ductile pipe, and you can see from the cross-section the cement lining, the enamel coatings on it. So the old pipes that we're replacing have lasted 100 years and they're in horrible shape, but the new modern materials seem to have a life that would much exceed those. Yet we're paying for, we've got something that's going in here now that's better than what, the previous technology that's going to last well beyond our years here and into the future. Why are we looking at only a 20-year bond on something that's going to be benefiting, generations and generations and generations to come?
That's not my decision to make, the bonding period. I will mention that other portions of the water system, the West Sites water system and the West Holyoke water system, those pipes are all in good shape. Those have all been updated. So there really isn't any infrastructure improvements planned for any of those two systems other than the construction of that storage tank. When we cut into the 12-inch pipe on Northampton Street, that pipe was perfectly clean. So that pipe's 100 years old. It has, it could have a 200-300 year lifespan. So there are some areas where we have older pipes where the inside condition is very good, almost like brand new, and we have other areas like Fairfield Avenue or Morgan Street where you have almost no flow going through that pipe.
Yeah.
So I think it's because Northampton Street is a primary line and the water moves relatively swiftly through that pipe, so there's not the formation of the tuberculation in the pipe as a result of that because of the flow. But you have a situation like Fairfield Avenue, you have 2 6-inch water mains on Fairfield Avenue. For what reason, I don't know why they did that, but they put 2 6-inch water mains in there and there's virtually no flow going through those pipes. So you take these pipes that are 130 years old and you put an aggressive water in them that's stagnant and you have this formation of this material all these years. We don't have those concerns today because we do pH adjustment, we do alkalinity addition, and we do a phosphate for coating of the pipe. So you're not going to see this formation going forward in any of these new pipes or any further in these unlined pipes.
All right, so I think that adds a little more to my argument as to why we're trying to pay for it in 20 years when we've got a benefit that's going to go on for 100.
Well, in
I'm
20
not suggesting a 100-year bond, but I think we're being a little aggressive in.
I think in 20 years, you're going to see filtration in Holyoke within 20 years. You're going to see filtration. It's coming. And then in 20 years, there may be other considerations for other pipe replacement, upgrades to some of the facilities, some of the pumping stations. So 20 years is a long time. It's a long time. And there's always going to be projects. There's always going to be projects
Yep.
to consider.
Okay.
Chairman Harbless.
Yes, sir.
The, Mr. Conti and the city council and the mayor, I guess we can say, is in favor of all these projects for obviously good reasons. Is there any discussion on what the water rate is going to be to pay for these bonds?
Well, it's gonna go up over, but we're gonna phase it in over 3 years, like Dave said. So hopefully the impact won't be too bad. But we couldn't just take care of this by just the rates we have now. We would have to increase it a small amount. And, the funny thing about when Mike Sullivan brought in that pipe, I think it was last year, working in the water department for as long as I did at Cabo, and we had 4-inch pipes to cool down those units. And all of a sudden, they weren't cooling down. So we had to replace them. And that 4-inch pipe, you could barely get a straw through. And those are 70 and 80 years old. We have pipes in the ground that are 120, 130 years. I mean, it's just not something that we can continue. The ones that need to be replaced, we're gonna phase them in and along with the water rates.
Thank you.
Just to Bill's point also, the picture that I've supplied you with here to look at and for the public to understand, it's not just pipes. This one here in particular is a valve. So when you look into that, you can actually see the gate from the valve. Every single hydrant has a gate at the bottom, and throughout the street, throughout the whole system, there's various gates. And this gate has so much tuberculation formed on it that it cannot open or close effectively anymore either. So there's a problem itself, never mind the flow, not being able to open or shut a gate, or having so much in there that when you do go to move it, you're gonna break the stem that controls that gate also, rendering it absolutely useless in whatever position it breaks in. So I just think that's something we gotta get out in front of everybody also. It's not just the pipes themselves.
Councilor Tomlin?
Yeah, just briefly, I want to thank you, Commissioner and Mr. Conti, for coming down and explaining this. I think what we're hearing is what's been going on over the years with the pipes and the aging of the pipes, and is the issue we had up in the Highlands that, we got to take care of our infrastructure. And it's a cost, and I know a lot of people aren't happy with it, and some of my colleagues on the council next Tuesday might not be happy with the increase, but if we want safety and if we want good water, we're going to have to pay for it. And the phasing in, I think, is a good thing, but it's going to be a hit for some people, people that are in limited incomes. And, that's one of my concerns, but it's something that I think for the residents of our community, for all areas of the community, when something happens and we need the water in a short time frame, that we need it and we need it ready. So that's my thing, and very much in favor of this bond proposal. I know we had the previous one, and I think the 3 years is each phase that is going to be important for each section of the city that needs the new pipes. That's going to be beneficial to the whole city, not just to certain areas of the city. So I think this is a good plan. It's going to hit some people, and I know people won't be happy, but it's a cost of we have to pay for safety and for our residents. So thank you for coming down and putting this plan before us.
Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah, and one more editorial to add to what Peter just said, as far as a hit to the public. When you go 20 or 25 years without a rate increase, right? And you look at the cost of these materials, right? We're still replacing a certain amount every year and working on a certain amount, but within that budget, within that fixed rate that never went up, you're only able to do less and less and less every year, because while the rate has stayed steady, the cost of these materials, the cost of labor, the cost of everything else has risen. So by not having over 20 years some gradual increases to match this, even though we're spending the same amount of dollars on repairs every year, we're able to do less and less and less linear feet of replacement. Is that a fair assessment of what's going on? So now we're faced with a sizable increase that probably should have been phased in over a longer period of time.
Councilor? McGee?
For each year to get to the 12?
Yeah.
What's the phase?
The recommendation would be to increase water rates July 1, 2020.
The 12 or at 4?
I think the proposal is 7/1/20, raise it to 51.51 cents per 100 gallons. 7/1/21, 55 cents, and 7/1/22, 59 cents.
Okay.
That has not been voted on yet either by the board.
Discussion. Any further discussion?
Motion to approve.
Motion made second to approve.
Second.
And to refer this to the full city council next Tuesday. I think we have enough to answer any questions from those who are not here this evening, but we appreciate both your presence this evening. And thank you, as always, for the fine work you do.
And Jill, I just wanted to say this. Mark Nadorf and Franny Dwyer were long-serving water commissioners here, and they were also very good friends of mine. And they told me from day one that there was a special relationship between the city council and the water department, and I found that to be true since the day I got elected. So I just want to thank you for your support.
Oh, we appreciate that.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And don't let David retire.
Oh, he's
That relationship will stay for a long time.
We've already talked about 16 more years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's no other business on the agenda?
Motion
to
adjourned.
All
No.
those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned.